My name is Mel Jimenez, like Pastor Andrew said, and this is my first time preaching. So, yes. Yes, I'm very excited. I got a little bit of nerves, so bear with me. But thank you for your smiling faces. I appreciate that very much. So today I'm excited to talk about Mark chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. And I want to reveal to you a few things in this passage. There's only 5 verses. But the thing I found most interesting when I was preparing for this talk, I did it in a way I thought I was supposed to, okay? So I'm not a church kid. I did not grow up doing any of this. The standing and the clapping, it's a lot for me still. I grew up Catholic, like you were quiet, like, shh, don't make a noise. Like kneel and bow and stand and kneel and bow. It was a lot. So this is new for me. So I did what I thought you're supposed to do. I created like a little area. I made like a little set. I opened my Bible. I got my Post-its and my highlighter. I had it all, right? And I started highlighting. Like I highlighted all 5 verses. I don't think you're supposed to do that. But I was like, oh, it's all good. This is all good. Yeah, I should talk about all of this. And then I have my sketchbook, and I started writing. And I did that for a little while, and it just it didn't feel right. It felt overwhelming. And I was like, okay, this isn't right. So I got up, and I left, and I did some work, and I took some time, and I went back later that night with like a new set of eyes, okay, like a little fresh wind. And it was better. And this time, God revealed to me some new things, like the second time I went back. And then I wrote a little, and I was like, okay, all right. And then I did it again, and I did it again, and I did it again. And so I did that like a couple times over like a couple of weeks. I'm an over-preparer. But what I'll say is God, every single time, he had something new to tell me. And the highlighted parts it wasn't all important. Of course, it was all important. It's his word. But there were parts that started to kind of pop out to me. And so those are the parts I want to share with you today. And maybe you've heard this sermon many times. Maybe you've read these verses like 100 times. But just bear with me and be opened and willing to hear maybe something new today. Because I do think that's how God works. So here, we're gonna talk through the verses. Let's pray. Let me pray first. Lord, thank you for this place. Thank you for these people. Thank you for this day. I pray, God, that my words would be your words. I pray that my heart would be your heart. God, I just pray for an openness and a willingness in the room to hear from you, not me, from you. And I pray, God, over all of these people in this room, just be with them today. Reveal to them parts of this word and parts of your heart for them that maybe you haven't before. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to read verses 1 through 5, and it's going to be up there. I'm going to read off my computer here, but if you don't have a Bible, there's one in front of you, so you can go ahead and grab that. All right, so here we are. Mark chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. Jesus went into the synagogue. Maybe I should read it this way. Yeah, because I don't have the whole thing. Okay, Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, "Come and stand in front of everyone." Then he turned to his critics and asked, "Does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? Is this day a day to save life or to destroy it?" But they wouldn't answer him. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. Then he said to the man, "Hold out your hand." So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. At once the Pharisees went away and met with the supporters of Herod to plot how to kill Jesus. So today, I want to talk about the thing that ended up popping out at me at the end of my time preparing. And that thing is not the miraculous healing in this story, surprisingly. Like, I thought that was going to be it. I was like, yes, the healing, awesome, love it, that's good, that's big, that's bold. It's not that part. It's not that part. I want to talk about the state of the hearts that are in the room with Jesus. So I want to talk about the state of the man's heart with the withered hand, the state of Jesus' heart, and the state of the heart of the Pharisees. So my first point is willing hands. That's what I called it. Willing hands. So I want to talk about the willing hands in the room. So follow me. The story is about a man with a deformed hand, right? It's a physical disability. It's something you can see. And Jesus sees it, right? If you put those verses up, I'll need them a lot. Thanks, guys. So it says he noticed, right? Jesus went into the synagogue, noticed a man with a deformed hand. So it's something you can see. So this man couldn't hide his physical disability, right? Jesus saw it. So he sees it, and what does he ask the man? He says, come, at first pass, this is my interpretation. Come, stand, hold out your hand, healed. That was my first pass. Not great. So I went back, there's more, right? There's so much more. So here's the more. Come stand in front of everyone. That's how I felt when Pastor Andrew asked me to do this, okay? I think I literally said to the man, in front of everyone? Like, what did I think he was gonna say? No, just me, like we can practice. No. In front of everyone. And then later on, further down in the verse, what else does Jesus ask him? Hold out your hand. Okay, so second pass, it's a big deal that it's everyone. Everyone is more than two people. Like, this is probably everyone. When you say, come, we're gonna go out with everyone, it's more than like a couple people. So it's a big deal, right? What Jesus is asking him is a bigger deal than what it first seems. And his hand, so I looked up the hand. What's the meaning of a hand in like biblical times? So a hand represents a couple things. Strength, favor, the hand of God. It represents provision in this time. Men worked with their hands. Like he was the provider probably of his family, right? This man probably couldn't work. We don't know much about him, but we know his hand is withered. And I think that's a very big deal. So Jesus is asking him, okay, listen, not only do I want you to come and stand in front of everyone, but I want you to hold out your hand. Your weakness, your shame, the thing you keep hidden. So Jesus is asking a lot of this man. It's a lot. But what does the man do? We see it down here. Where am I? I asked for it on one slide, so you did what I asked. Then he said to the man, hold out your hand. So the man held out his hand, and it was restored. So what was the man? He was willing, right? He was willing. Jesus asked him, and he was willing. So I would say this man has willing hands. Withered, yes, but willing. I loved this verse. I literally fell in love with this verse. So that's what Jesus asks this man. So two things I want to say about that part of this story. One, I want to live like that man. I want to live in front of Jesus like this. That's how I want to live. In front of my friends, my family, my husband, I want to live like this. Open and willing to whatever Jesus is asking of me, willing to be wrong, willing to be selfish, right? Willing to be called out for the things in my heart that need healing. And this man was willing. Jesus tells us he was. So I want to live like that man. And I believe that's what Jesus is asking of us. I believe he's asking us not just to hold out our hand if we need that kind of healing, but our heart. So my first question is, are you willing? Are you willing to live like that? Because this is another thing he revealed to me. The healing doesn't happen until the man holds out his hand. It doesn't happen until he steps out, right? Jesus doesn't do his part until the man does his. So I think it's a very important part of this story that Jesus asks. He doesn't just come in, and he doesn't do it in private. He's not like, cool, let's go back here real quick. I'm going to heal you. No, in front of everyone. Like he's asking for a willing hand, a willing heart So are you willing? That's my first question to you. Are you willing? So the second part of my talk today I want to talk about is the unwilling hearts in the room, or what I'm calling the withered hearts, and that's the hearts of the Pharisees. So I'm going to say something mean, but it's fine. So I think that they are the greatest example of mean girls in the Bible. I really do. I lived through some mean girl moments, so I feel like I can say this. But I really do. I feel like they are mean girls. I feel like they have hard hearts, right? And I want to read this. I want to reveal the state of their hearts in the room. I'm calling them withered hearts. So let's read verse 2. I'm going to read it off of here because it's not. Okay. Jesus' enemies watched him closely, right? That's one thing I want to point out. Second thing, later on in same verse, they planned to accuse him. Okay, mean girls. Like all I'm seeing is mean girls. And then verse 4, but they wouldn't answer him. He asks them a question, right? And they're nothing, like just, you can't sit with us. Right? Like, do you see it? Okay, you see it. That's good. I appreciate that. That's good. Yeah, I'm glad you see it. So they wouldn't answer him. What a fun group, right? Jesus is in the house of the Lord. In the house of the Lord. He's in the synagogue. I'm going to talk about that in a second. I'm not going to get ahead. I want to talk about something first. But he's oh man. They wouldn't answer him. This gives us such a good picture of the state of their hearts and how different it is from the state of the man's heart, right? So let me talk about the synagogue. I'm going to talk about that first. So this is all happening, verse 1, and I didn't notice this, like the first, the second, the third time. Like I was like, okay, yeah, who cares where it is? What's happening? Like that was my approach. I was like, what's the important part? But I think the important part is that it was in the synagogue. I think that's important because apparently you can be in God's house and not in his hands. Apparently, you can be in the presence of God in the midst of a miracle and still be a scoffer. Apparently, you can be fixed on Jesus. Your eyes they were looking at him and still lose sight of his love. That's all God's. That was so good. That's not mine. Like he 1000% just like, thank God. But right, like apparently that can be the state of your heart in the synagogue, in the house of the Lord. That blows my mind, but it's also very convicting. So let's jump down a little bit and talk about verse 5. This one's heavy. He looked around at them angrily and was deeply saddened by their hard hearts. I would argue that if you're not living like this, then you're living like this. And if you're living like this is not an open hand, right? It's the opposite. It's a closed hand. That's why I wanted the mic. I'm a hands person. I'm from Jersey. I got to talk with my hands. So if you're not living like this, right? Well, reason has it that you're living like this. And this is a closed hand. And what's a closed hand? A fist. And what's a fist ready for? A fight. Right? It's ready for a fight. And here's where I got to talk about myself. He told me to do this. I got to do it. It's going to get emotional. It's fine. I lived like this for years. This was all I knew before Jesus. I just had him up against whoever, the mean girls, whoever, anyone who was like, I felt like was coming to get me, right? Me against the world. That's how I lived. And then by the grace of God, Jesus plucked me up and he showed me and is showing me how to live like this. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I lived like this. It's a funny story, so I'm cloaking the honesty in humor, so it's safe. I'm comfortable. So when I was in high school, I loved punk music, okay? Does anybody know what punk music is? Am I dating? Yeah, okay. We all have to talk after. I don't know who that was, but I'm very excited about that. So I love punk music. And I was a punk, like I was a punk through and through. And I lived in New Jersey, I grew up in New Jersey, I would go to these firehouse shows. That's where like the local gritty kid-like bands played. They were terrible, but they were loud. And I loved it. So I would go to these punk shows in firehouses, and I would go straight to the mosh pit. Everybody know what a mosh pit is? Okay, because it's not cool if I have to explain it. So, yeah, you get it. Okay. So I would go to the mosh pit, and I would like, because it was perfectly acceptable, right, to like hold your hand, like to punch. Like the point is to punch, like kick and scream. And I was a girl, so like there weren't many of me, but I was like, yes, this is it. This is my moment. This is where I thrive. You know, loved it. I would go to the mosh pit. And I'd wait for the music, and I would just, loved it. Just hoping to hit a blonde, you know, hit a mean girl. Yeah. Sorry. It's fine. Pastor Julie is one of my closest friends. I got a lot of blinds in my life. We're good. We're so good. We are at peace. Promise. Ooh, I said that out loud. So, oh boy. But I would say I lived withered. I would say I lived like the Pharisees. I was ready to point out the wrong, to be like, that's not fair. I don't deserve that. I lived withered. And I think that's why the Pharisees offend me so much. Like, I think that's why I'm like, they're mean girls. Like, they really offend me because they remind me of my withered heart. They remind me that I used to live like that, right? They remind me that your heart can be withered and that living like this brings you, I'll tell you what it brought me, endless pain, anger, tons of anger, and isolation. Because you can imagine, I was a joy to be around. They were lining up. That's what it brought me. That's what living like this brought me. But living like this, the most uncomfortable thing. I feel like my whole walk with God has been him prying open my stubborn, childish, petty punk hands so that he could teach me how to live like this. Open and willing. And what do I have to show for it? A lot. More than I deserve. More than I could have ever imagined. My world got so much bigger. So much bigger when I started to live like this. And here we go. Where am I now? I'm not in a firehouse kicking and screaming anymore, thank God. It was fun, but probably not good for you. I'm here, right? I'm in a church preaching, preaching the gospel. This is wild. It is, it's wild. And that's, I don't need all that. I don't even want all that. Thanks, sorry, that was rude. Sorry. But here's what I want to say. I am here now doing this because I lived like this, right? Because I lived open-handed. And what do I have to show for it? Preaching the gospel. If you told me in the firehouse at that punk show that I would be doing this, I would have punched you in the face. I would have punched you in the face. But here I am, and God has opened my heart, like over the years. I'm 20 years into following Jesus, which is also wild to say. But 20 years in, he softened my heart. And it was hard, real hard. I have friends that love me more than I deserve. So much so that it makes me uncomfortable. You all make me uncomfortable. I can't even look at them. Like, I can't even look at you. My friends are up here. I can't. I know they're like smiling and it's gross. But I do. He's brought me what I needed, what my withered heart needed to heal, right? So I want to ask you another question today. Not just are you willing, but how's your heart? How's your heart? How are you living? Are you living like this? Are you living like this? I get it. I am not here to judge. I get it if you're living like this. It's a mess out there. The world is messy. There are broken people, broken systems, broken families. It is broken out there, but it's broken in here too. I've lived with a withered heart, and here's the part I don't say out loud. I've lived with a heart before Jesus, but I've lived with a heart that is withered after him too. And that's the ugly part, right? There are parts of our heart that can still stay withered to Jesus. Look at the Pharisees. They are teachers of the law. They're in God's house. Like, this can happen here. I know it's a mess out there. I said that, but yeah, it can happen in here too. So I think this is a cautionary tale for all of us in this room. Like, real talk. I don't know how to do anything else. Real talk. I think that one of the most faithful things we can do for Jesus is to be honest with ourselves about the state of our hearts, of our minds, and of our souls. That's all he wants. That's what he's asking for in the story. He's not just asking for the man's hand, he's asking for his heart. It takes a lot for that man to reach out his hand. It takes a lot for us too. So I don't know who you are in this story. I don't know if you're the man with the withered hand, willing, or if you're the Pharisees. Maybe your heart is soft to Jesus. I love that. I probably should spend more time around you. It's good. It's beautiful. It's good if that's like your natural inclination. I love that. But it's not for me. He is undoing. He's continually undoing. And I also believe that healing doesn't just happen once. Yes, the man was healed, but we don't know anything else about the man, right? Did he get up and give his whole life to Jesus? I think so. Because how can you be healed by Jesus and not have your heart changed? Right? So I think there's a lot of beauty in this story. I think there's a lot of caution in it too. And maybe you need healing today. Maybe you need to hold out your hand. There's no shame in that. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Holding out your hand to Jesus is showing that you trust him, right? What happens when we give our heart to someone in a relationship, right? We hope that we can trust them with it, right? Well, the good news is you can trust Jesus with it. Hands down. He's probably the only one you can trust with your whole heart. And he's asking for all of it. Not just a part of it, not just like most of it today, half of it tomorrow, quarter of it on Tuesday, and then like by the weekend, I'm gonna need that back, you know? He's asking for all of it. So I practice what I preach. I've lived withered, right? I lived angry. I lived frustrated. And if that's you today, I would encourage you to hold out your hand. Maybe it's during prayer, maybe it's metaphorical, like this is uncomfortable. I get that. Like the punk in me in church doing this, again, I would probably punch myself. The fact that I can do this, like that's huge. That's a testament to Jesus' healing power, right? It's a testament to how much he can work in the hardest of hearts, if you are willing. That's the kicker. If you are willing, he wants you to hand it over. He doesn't want you to live like this. It's going to bring you endless pain, right? Endless suffering, endless isolation. So are you willing? I encourage you to stretch out your hand today. Maybe you actually need physical healing. That's something I want to mention. Maybe there's a part of your body that is withered, deformed, they say in this story. I don't like that word. I like withered. I used it because it's like more poetic. And I'm a moody art kid. I was like, withered. It's like such a punk, right? I even like the word withered. But right, maybe you have a physical need that you need healing for. Jesus can do that too. Proof in that story. Right? He healed him. The man walked away. He was restored. It says restored, not just healed. And that's how I know it's a heart posture. It's more than the hand. It's the heart. I've lived it. I know that it's true. I am still living it. And listen, I'm not going to stand in front of you and say, I got it all figured out. I do not, if it's not clear. Which I feel like it's not, right? He's still doing a work in me. He's still moving, and he's still healing, and he's still digging deep. He asked me to when I was preparing this sermon. He was like, that's not enough, more. It's like, okay. But this is good, right? They'll be fine with this. Every time I went back, he had more. And Pastor Andrew talks about this a lot. He says that the Bible is a living and breathing thing. It's God's living word. And God proved that to me in the preparation of today, more than I ever have known before. Because every time I went back, something new. Like his grace was sufficient. It was more than enough. Every time. I was like, I don't feel good about this. No, I can't say that. That's weird. Every time, new things. And it's 5 verses. Like, we're not talking about a lot. You could argue it's like a couple sentences. But I believe God has more. There is more. There is more. I believe that truly for our lives, in our hearts, in our relationships. Right? Maybe your relationship needs healing today. Don't look at your wife. Don't do it. Okay, nobody did. Good job. Don't do it. It's not a good look. But maybe your relationship needs healing, right? Maybe that's what you have to stretch out your hand for. Maybe it's not your heart. Maybe it's your life. But I would argue they're connected. It's all connected. And the last thing I'll say is we have to play our own part in our own healing. I don't think it's just, like I said, first pass. He wasn't just like, yeah, stand here, or let's go in the back, and then I'm going to heal you. No. In front of everyone. Now, I don't think it has to happen in a large group context. If you want to pray with your friends after service in a corner, fine, do that. Find whatever is like comfortable for your heart, but I urge you to reach out your hand today. Because I promise you, there is more on the other side. There is so much more. My world just bigger. I feel like it can't get any bigger. I'm like, babe, how did we get here? How did we even get here? I'm from the East Coast, born and bred. I thought I would die drinking Dunkin'. You don't have it. I'm very upset. It's not here. I know you're laughing, but I would kill for a Dunkin'. I didn't expect to live here. I didn't expect to move here. But God brought me here, and he surrounded me And that's how I want to live now. I want to live surrounded. And I don't want to kick and scream and punch anymore. I don't want to live like that. It left me withered. But boy, do I need God to remind me every day. I got to wake up every day and do this. I like this actual illustration I'm doing. I do this like by myself in the bathroom every day. Like I do this. I'm like, okay, I'm going to live like this. I get stressed out, I get angry, I get upset. Okay, I'm going to live like this. This is good for me. I don't know if that's something that might help you, but this is good for me. If you catch yourself any day living like this, if you're in an argument and your hands are literally like this, if you're in a work environment and your hands are like this, like just literally relax your hands. It's therapeutic. It almost relaxes your heart. It does something. And that's what I love about worship. God took something I loved, music, angry, screaming music. It's not all angry. Some of punk music is really great. It's beautiful. I still listen to some of it. But the way it's sung, it sounds angry, right? He took music and he redeemed that. He gave me a heart of worship, yes. Yes, he gave me a heart of worship. And now I can stand like this. And this is a big deal. That I can stand like this, that I can live like this. So the band can join me. Oh, look at that. They already are. Hi. That's cool. So maybe this is uncomfortable for you. We're going to go into a time of worship. But try it. Try it. When I first got to Rose and I would worship, I would do this. And then I'd put them away, but I don't want anybody to see me. All right, a little. Okay, cool. Cool. You did it. Good day. I did. And then each time, it's like how he brought me back to the word and revealed. Brought me back to reveal. This is what he does for me in worship, and I believe he can do it for you. I am a punk at heart. I am. But he did this. And he's still doing it. So I encourage you to outstretch your hands today. Try to worship like this. Try and see what he does. I promise you, he will make your world bigger.